Olesya Suspitsnya climbed over a safety fence at the edge of a cliff to snap a stunning vacation photo at Duden Park in Antalya, Turkey. But she had no idea it would be her final photo. As she stood up, Olesya suddenly slipped on the grass. In an instant, she plunged off a cliff, falling 35 meters straight into the Mediterranean Sea. She did not survive the fall. At first glance, you'd never guess the chilling story behind that photo. In this video, I've gathered some of the most haunting images captured just moments before tragedy struck. One of them was taken just before the deaths of 230,000 people. Just a heads up, as always, viewer discretion is advised. September 27, 2024, Georgia. 24-year-old Irina Glazunova was walking through downtown Tbilisi with a friend, filming a lip-sync TikTok to an old Russian song called The Last Time. She had no idea how eerily prophetic those lyrics would become. While posing for the video, Irina suddenly disappeared into darkness. You can see the terror in her friend's eyes in the footage, and the phone keeps falling for what feels like forever. Irina didn't notice the railing around a subway entrance. It was low, way too low, and she accidentally stumbled right over it. She fell nearly 5 meters and slammed her back against the concrete below. She suffered fractures to her skull and neck. Tragically, she didn't make it to the hospital alive. So here's one simple rule to always remember. Watch where you're going, especially in unfamiliar places. Death can find you anywhere, but in dangerous conditions, the risk multiplies fast. July 3rd, 2022, Italy. Experienced mountaineer Filippo Bari stands on the snowy slope of Marmolada, the highest peak in the Dolomites. Smiling, he snaps a selfie and sends it to his family with the message, "Look where I am." But while Filippo was taking in the views, a glacier at the summit suddenly collapsed. An avalanche of snow, ice, and rock came crashing down the mountain at terrifying speed, wiping out everything in its path. Filippo had no time to react. Within seconds, the rushing mass buried him under tons of snow. Experts believe the collapse was caused by record-high temperatures that day, 10 degrees Celsius, extremely unusual for that region. That day, 8 tourists were injured and 7 were killed. One of them was Filippo. His family was devastated. Minutes earlier, they'd seen him smiling, alive, and full of joy. Always take potential dangers seriously when you're climbing. It's not just the cold you have to worry about. Sometimes it's the heat. And sometimes it's not the terrain itself that makes a hike deadly. August 30th, 2015, Alabama. 18-year-old Jolie Kalin stood at the edge of a cliff, taking in the breathtaking views of Chehaw State Park. That moment was captured in a photo by her ex-boyfriend, 20-year-old Lauren Bunner. The two had broken up a few months earlier, but they stayed in touch, so they went on the hike as just friends. Lauren even posted pictures from the trip on social media. It was supposed to be a fun adventure, but right after that photo was taken, Jolie fell 12 meters off the cliff. With shaking hands, Lauren called 911 and said, I killed my ex. The day before, Jolie had joked with a friend, "If something happens to me, you'll know who I was with." Turns out it wasn't an accident. Jolie didn't slip. Lauren pulled the trigger, then pushed her body off the edge. He was sentenced to 52 years in prison. Never go on a trip with someone if you're unsure of their intentions. And you know who else you can never truly trust? Wild animals, even the ones that seem tame or trained. December 1st, 2006. Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Ali Khan Samsudin, famously known as the Snake King, stood confidently with a king cobra wrapped around his arm. The snake stared at him, almost hypnotized. Samsudin was a legend for his death-defying stunts. At one point, he lived for 40 straight days in a room with 400 cobras, 12 hours a day. He also spent 21 days in a glass enclosure with 6,000 scorpions. That earned him a Guinness World Record and the title Scorpion King. Ali always seemed to defy the impossible, but right after this photo was taken, during yet another live show, something went terribly wrong. Out of nowhere, the cobra lunged and bit Ali on the hand. At first, the audience didn't even realize what was happening. He was still on his feet, but his expression changed. His eyes lost focus, his movements slowed. He was rushed to the hospital, but the venom from a king cobra is incredibly potent. That same day, the legendary snake and scorpion king was gone. And this wasn't the only time an animal acted in a way no one expected. October 3rd, 2003, Las Vegas, USA. Hundreds of people sat breathless inside the Mirage Hotel Theater, watching as trainer and illusionist Roy Horn offered a treat to a white tiger named Manticore. That exact moment was captured in a photo. According to the show's script, the tiger was supposed to greet the audience with his signature roar. Roy lifted the microphone to the animal's mouth, when suddenly, Manticore grabbed his sleeve. Trying to calm him, Roy gently touched the tiger's nose and firmly said, "No." For a moment, it seemed like everything was under control, until Manticore lunged. He sank his jaws into Roy's neck and dragged him off stage. The audience sat frozen in horror. Stagehands rushed to help, barely managing to pull the tiger away. Roy suffered deep neck wounds, a damaged spine, and a stroke that left him partially paralyzed. The incident made headlines around the world. Many believe the tiger should be put down, but Roy's partner, Siegfried Fischbacher, who was also on stage that night, defended the animal. Siegfried later claimed it all started when a woman in the front row reached out to pet the tiger. Roy stepped between them and accidentally fell. Manticore may have tried to pull him to safety, not realizing that humans don't have the loose skin on their necks like tiger cubs. That misunderstanding may have led to the attack. When Roy regained consciousness, he insisted the tiger didn't mean to hurt him and begged for his life to be spared. Manticore was never euthanized, but the attack effectively ended the legendary duo's career. Years later, they made just one final appearance together on stage. Never forget, no matter how well trained a wild animal may seem, it's still wild. And when a stranger enters its space, anything can happen. May 28, 2016, Cincinnati, USA. A 3-year-old boy tugged on his mom's hand, repeating that he wanted to see the gorilla. She didn't think much of it at the time. While her attention was elsewhere, the boy climbed over a nearly 3-foot metal barrier, pushed through a dense row of bushes, and fell 15 feet straight into the zoo's gorilla enclosure, landing in the water. Zoo staff sprang into action, calling the animals inside. 2 female gorillas responded right away, but 17-year-old male Harambe didn't. At first, the gorilla simply stood and watched the boy, as if trying to figure out what was going on. Then Harambe reached out, touched the child, and took his hand. He picked the boy up, almost as if he were examining him more closely, then began pulling him away from the water. Witnesses said the boy didn't cry or resist, but he looked absolutely terrified. With every move, the powerful gorilla risked hurting him. People began screaming, trying to scare Harambe off, but it only seemed to confuse him, maybe even agitate him. What you're seeing here are the final moments, not of a human, but of the gorilla. Yes, in this story, it wasn't the child who died. Fearing for the boy's life, zoo officials made the heartbreaking decision to shoot Harambe. His behavior was too unpredictable, and protecting the child came first. Thankfully, the boy was rescued without serious injuries. Footage of Harambe's last moments went viral almost instantly. The internet exploded. Some supported the zoo's decision. Others were outraged, insisting the gorilla didn't have to die. After the incident, the zoo reinforced safety measures and redesigned the barriers around enclosures. Let this be a reminder: never cross safety barriers at zoos, and never let your kids do it either. A single mistake could cost not just a human life, but the life of an animal that may have never intended to harm anyone. But now, let's talk about something that is undeniably dangerous. Something that's always scared me. Planes. August 12th, 1985, Japan. One of the 509 passengers aboard Japan Airlines Flight 123 snapped this beautiful photo from their window seat. The sky looks calm, the view serene, but that peace was about to be shattered, and soon everyone on board would find themselves in a living nightmare. Just 12 minutes after takeoff, as the plane climbed to 7,300 meters, a sudden jolt rocked the cabin, followed by a deafening sound. At that moment, the rear pressure bulkhead inside the aircraft burst. The explosion tore off the vertical stabilizer and destroyed all the hydraulic systems. The plane was nearly impossible to control. In the cockpit, chaos took over. Still, the crew, led by Captain Masami Takahama, fought desperately to keep the aircraft steady. Passengers were told to put on their oxygen masks. This photo, it's the last known image of some of those on board. For 32 long minutes, the crew tried to get the plane back to Tokyo, but without the tail stabilizer, it was nearly impossible. Then, through the windows, passengers saw something terrifying: a mountain slope. And it was getting closer. Within seconds, the plane slammed into Mount Takamagahara and exploded. 520 people died instantly. Only 4 survived: 3 women and a young girl who had been sitting at the back of the aircraft. That part of the plane took a less direct hit, and the debris softened the impact just enough. They waited 14 long, agonizing hours before rescue teams finally reached them. JAL Flight 123 remains the deadliest single aircraft accident in aviation history. The investigation revealed the tragedy started 7 years earlier, with a repair job gone wrong. A single metal plate in the tail section had been installed incorrectly. I've always been terrified of planes, because when you're up there, nothing is really in your hands. You have to trust the crew, the mechanics, and even the strangers sitting around you. October 31st, 2015, Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. Yuri Shine held his 3-year-old daughter, Anastasia, in his arms, along with his wife, Olga. The family was boarding an Airbus A321-231. It was Metrojet Flight 9268, bound for St. Petersburg. Olga even snapped a photo of the moment and posted it online with the caption, "Heading home." The flight was full of tourists returning from Red Sea vacations. There were 224 people on board, but 23 minutes after takeoff, as the plane reached 9,500 meters, it suddenly disappeared from radar. Nearby pilots reported seeing the jet break apart midair over the Sinai Peninsula, but this wasn't caused by a malfunction like in the previous case. A terrorist had smuggled a homemade bomb on board, roughly equivalent to 1 kilogram of TNT. The explosion was later claimed by ISIS. All 224 people on board were killed, and sadly, terrorism remains a threat the world continues to face. July 17, 2014, Flight MH17. Aboard a Malaysia Airlines Boeing 777, a mother and her daughter sat by the window. Just before takeoff, they snapped this sweet photo. They were flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. The woman chose this flight simply because the departure time was convenient. She had no idea the flight path would take them over a war zone where Russian-backed militants were fighting on Ukrainian territory. As the jet passed over Ukraine's Donetsk Oblast, at 10,000 meters, it was struck by a missile from a Russian Buk air defense system. The cockpit and front section exploded instantly. Moments later, the entire aircraft broke apart mid-air. At the crash site, children's toys and drawings were scattered among the wreckage. There were 80 children on that flight. No one survived the crash. That's why it's always worth checking the route your plane is flying. But even then, sometimes the biggest dangers come not from people, but from nature itself. May 18, 1980, Washington, USA. At the Coldwater 2 observation post, about 10 kilometers from Mount St. Helens, volcanologist David Johnston watched the mountain closely through his telescope. For weeks, he'd been trying to catch the exact moment the volcano would finally erupt, after 123 years of silence. By May 16th, the mountain had started showing signs of life. Small earthquakes, steam explosions, and a noticeable bulge forming on the northern slope as magma pushed its way to the surface. Here's David, 13 hours before the eruption, smiling, full of anticipation. On the morning of May 18th, a magnitude 5.1 earthquake triggered the largest landslide ever recorded. The volcano's entire north face blew off, unleashing a deadly blast of gas, ash, and debris racing out at over 1,000 kilometers per hour. When Johnston saw it, he immediately radioed in. Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it. He was the first to alert the world that the eruption was underway, but he was far too close to escape. Knowing what was coming, David kept snapping photos of the ash cloud barreling toward him. In his final moments, he tucked the film into his backpack and shielded it with his body, hoping to preserve the shots. But just seconds later, the blast hit his post. David was killed instantly, along with 56 others. Sadly, the film was destroyed with him. No matter how passionate you are about your work, your life will always matter more. Still, there are some professions where risking your life is part of the job. June 30th, 2013, Yarnell, Arizona. Firefighter Christopher McKenzie was holding a camera, taking a photo of his teammate, Robert Caldwell. Robert stood in a cloud of smoke, holding a flare, preparing to burn off dry brush and create a fire break, hoping to stop the flames from spreading. Both men were part of the Granite Mountain Hotshots, an elite firefighting crew from Prescott. Their mission? To contain the Yarnell Hill fire, sparked by lightning in late June 2013. But the fire wasn't giving up without a fight. By that day, it had already scorched more than 200 acres and was closing in on nearby communities. Then the wind shifted, suddenly and violently. In moments, the fire changed direction and surged straight toward the firefighters. There was no time to outrun it. The flames surrounded them. There was no way out. When rescuers reached the scene, they discovered that 19 of the 20 hotshots had been killed. The only survivor was Brendan McDonough, who had been stationed at a lookout point away from the main crew. Earlier that same day, firefighter Andrew Ashcraft sent a photo of the team to his wife. It ended up being their last picture together. Nature can be brutally unforgiving, and sometimes it's not fire, but water that causes the most destruction. December 26, 2004, Khao Lak, Thailand. Deborah Garlick playfully posed for a photo while sunbathing by the Indian Ocean. Her boyfriend, Kevin McCarthy, stood behind the camera. No one on the beach, Deborah included, seemed to notice how quickly the ocean was pulling away from the shore, exposing the seabed. Some people even paused to snap photos of the strange sight. No one realized this was the warning sign of a massive tsunami, triggered by a 9.1 magnitude earthquake off the coast of Sumatra. A towering wall of water was already racing toward the shore. At first, beachgoers froze in shock. Then they ran. But by then, it was already too late. The wave hit the shore at over 500 kilometers per hour, demolishing everything in its path. Deborah and Kevin, like most tourists, were caught completely off guard. Later, rescue teams recovered Kevin's camera from the wreckage. It held one final photo of Deborah, relaxed, smiling, unaware that the beach behind her would be wiped off the map just minutes later. The tsunami didn't stop at Thailand. It struck country after country along the Indian Ocean, killing more than 230,000 people. None of the people in this video knew they were living their final moments. Some of them had choices, others didn't stand a chance. But ask yourself, have you ever noticed a warning sign, but ignored it? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, because one day, one of these stories might just save your life.